I wanted to introduce Dan Martell, who came down from San Francisco to join us tonight, and he's going to introduce himself, actually.
Woo!
Hello, everybody. We are going to have some fun tonight. I'm just going to find my slides because I hid them. All right, it's keynote. There they are. 1, 2, 4. All right, how many people want to learn how to succeed at anything they try to do? Show of hands. Awesome. How many people want to learn that tonight?
Woo!
Cool, we've got the right crowd. First off, I want to thank Pete and Joe for bringing me up here. I got to say, and Patrick for kind of coordinating everything. It's not often I get a chance to come and share a story, and I just want to say thanks, and also to Coloft for hosting the event. Everybody give a round of hands for Coloft. So so if you have an iPhone, can you guys take it out and wave it up really high? If you have an iPhone or any smartphone, I should have said. Feel free to tweet and use the hashtag lean startup or lean anything so that I can see it afterwards. If you guys have anything that stand out or you guys want to give me some feedback, do that.
Lean LA as well.
Lean LA, yeah, just use Lean LA. I'll look for that.
I'm checking to Foursquare.
Yeah, check into Foursquare for Coloft. Awesome.
All right, wait, everyone's checking the Foursquare right now.
I love the hustle. That's great. Cool.
Welcome.
Lean LA. Perfect. So who am I? First and foremost, Canadian. Any Canadians in the house? Yeah, love it. Cool. So I'm from a province called New Brunswick. I've been doing startups for about 10 years. My last company I started in 2004, sold it in 2008. And thought to myself, what the heck am I going to do with my life? And decided at that point that, so my last company was very much service-based, so we did things for large Fortune 500 companies. And I was on this, I was adamant to learn, how can you build a company that people reward you based on the quality of the product and not on the quality of the relationship? And that was the big differentiator where I realized that a lot of the success I had is meeting people, making friends, networking, if you want to use that word. But I thought there was something really special when I used a lot of these consumer internet applications that I never knew who built it. I didn't know who the founders were, but I knew I was using it every day. And for me, I wanted to go to the place that would teach me that, and that was San Francisco. So in September of 2008, I pretty much gave up everything I had in Canada and showed up with a mountain bike and a suitcase and started asking lots of questions. So what I did is pretty much for about 8 months is kind of like a marketing sabbatical. And that's honestly when I met Eric Rees before he even did his first Lean Startup talk. Sean Ellis before I think he even had his blog, Startup Marketing. He was just finishing up some projects with Dropbox. And Dave McClure, Pirate Metrics, and all these guys who really became essentially my mentors and the people that I learned a lot about. And for 10 months, I really talked to a lot of startups to figure out what they'd been doing that worked, understood what kind of marketing tactics, because I was adamant, based on my previous business, that to succeed at anything, it's really about marketing, right? You could have the coolest thing in the world, but if nobody knew about it, or you didn't know how to understand how to acquire customers, you'd be in a lot of trouble. So I spent 10 months doing that, and I'll tell you why, but I really should have been spending more time on product development. So Flowtown. Flowtown is a startup I co-founded with my co-founder Ethan Block. What we do is we essentially turn emails into social profiles with the vision to create a marketing platform for social media. So essentially constant contact for social media is kind of our big vision. But today that's kind of what we do, and we've added some other features on top of that. And what's interesting is I had read, so when I first met Sean, he was like, hey, you got to read this book called The 4 Steps to Epiphany. And I was in this sabbatical mode, so I was reading everything from landing page optimizations to viral loops to you name it. If it was internet marketing, but I got through it, and I thought, okay, so the big idea is understand your customer before you try to build something for them, right? It seems logical, but based on my past experience, I don't know a lot of people that actually started at the onset to say, let's go figure out who the customer is and figure out what their challenges are before we build any solution. And when Ethan came to me with the idea for Flowtown, so the fun part about Flowtown is I was advising startups on marketing and tactics, and the thing about a startup is they don't have money, so you can only really focus on press, social media, and SEO and kind of viral optimization, so anything that's free. And I was doing these kind of more advanced stuff for startups, and Ethan said, so Ethan, the short story is Ethan got laid off, he was organic financial. he didn't know what to do next. I said he should start a business. He's like, well, I don't know what I should do. And I'm like, well, you should help me do these things that I was helping these startups think about, but I wasn't doing. So he did that, and after like 3 weeks, he's like, there's a product to be had here. Like, I know it's geeky to be like doing viral loops and kind of like social sharing optimization. Like, that's not something that a large market will get. But if we distill it into something that's kind of tangible, people would probably buy into it. And I said, well, all I know is that you're not a small business owner, so go to market and try to understand what they do based on this book, 4 Steps to Epiphany. So he's like, well, how does that look? I was like, well, we'll launch the company, and by design, we'll launch as a service company, acquire 15 customers that are going to pay us to solve their marketing needs, and after we've done the 15th paid, we should have learned a lot and decide at that point what product we're going to launch with, right? Logical. It makes, I don't know, I thought it made a lot of sense. So that's what we did. We launched the company in, I think, February of '09. We got I think in 3 months, we ended up getting 15 customers that paid us between $500 and $1,500 per month, and we did everything. You wanted SEO, we did SEO. You wanted PPC, we did PPC. You wanted email marketing, you got it. Like, everything. You want Twitter maintenance, okay. Like, it was just like anything to understand what a small business thought about marketing, and then wrapping into that kind of social, because we knew that was really where the growth market was. And during that time, what was fun is that Ethan was doing all the services side, because that was like where I was like, no, I did that, I don't want to do that, and I'll work on prototypes. So we built 6 different prototypes that took between a day to 3 or 4 days to build that would help us automate some of the stuff we were doing for these companies. So things like, you know, identifying Twitter influencers and figuring out how to follow them, to building email marketing kind of sending systems, to Google Analytics is not a tool that a small business owner wants to log into. It like makes no sense to them. So we kind of built this reporting engine on top of that. And I mean, we did things like, if we could pay a virtual assistant to fake it, we would do that, right? So we like, whatever the least amount of effort to build these prototypes, we thought that's the right path. And the funny part was that, and when we built this landing page app too, because we noticed a lot of people were sending traffic that they were paying for, right? Google AdWords, like the market tanked for a lot of these small businesses, and they were struggling. And the only thing they could think of is this internet thing, which I've not yet invested in. Let's try it. So they were asking us to build paid campaigns. But their website sucked. It was like there was nothing on their website. It was like a brochure. So we built these tools that allow them to convert the traffic into email and then market that way. So we figured we're going to launch with the email, a landing page application, which was called landingpa.es pages or whatever. It was crazy. So that was the one we took our stake on. And that day we like pretty much fired all of our customers, wrote a blog post, and it's still public, I think. It's kind of funny. Ethan's a hip hop fan, and so am I, actually. And he did like this whole Jay-Z thing, like, we're focused, man. And like it was all about product now, and like, thanks for being our customers, but we actually did that to learn, you know, and we're transitioning over to this tool. It's still up online if you want to search.
Did they get refunds?
Well, no, because, so we knew we were always going to do that, so we always in parallel had a partner. So all the ones that wanted to continue maintenance, so we were doing some paid stuff, but at the time, most of it was kind of set up. So yeah, we never left anybody hanging, but we were not doing any more new stuff. And we launched with this landing page app. So, well, we didn't launch. We said, that's the day we're going to do it. We went in with another engineer, myself and Ethan, we sat down and we built this over like a 6-week period. And we launched it. And we were like, yay, because we were doing a lot of like lead gen, so we had a lot of emails to launch. And I think it was after 6 weeks to 2 months, we had 500 registered users and 1 paying customer. This guy VK from India paying us $9.99 a month, $10, right? Now, it doesn't take a Scientologist to figure out that that's just not going to scale, right? Like there was no, I remember like I walk into Ethan's apartment and I was like, do we got any new signups? And he's like, no. And I'm like, dude, like, I don't want to tell you what to do, but you need to figure something out. And then we had this conversation. It was really like, for me, it was always been, what problems do you want to solve? What tools do you use every day? And the short story is, we were both using this product called Hedwig that we built as one of the prototypes every day. He was using it about 30 times a day, and I was using it about 15. And neither of us told each other, right? So here's this tool that both of us use every day for our workflow, and all it did was turn an email into a social profile. And it wasn't a landing page app, but it's kind of like what we thought would be the next thing we'd add on after we converted these emails. So we thought, well, what could we do, instead of doing what we just did, what's the least amount of effort we can invest to try to validate this based on lean, based on customer development, to get something in front of people? And the first thing we thought was high fidelity mock-ups. So we hired a designer, spent like another $2,000 to build 6 high fidelity mock-ups that Ethan then took and sold to startups. And he got people, I think he got 20 people to pay him for early, we call it the early adopter program, early access to this thing we were going to build. Here's what it's going to do. So it was like, it looked almost like it was gonna, like built, and he got that validation. And even at that point, it wasn't enough. So they said the next thing we're going to do is spend like 3 or 4 days building this really simple smoke test. We called it. Essentially, upload your emails. We'll analyze them. We'll show you kind of the aggregate view, and there's a call to action button that said, for, you know, we charge, it was 5 cents times the amount of emails. For $14, we'll show you the detailed report. And we want to see how many people click it. And so we built this thing. I built a list of 100 emails, send it out to all those people, and from the emails we had 20% conversion of people that clicked that they would have paid for it, right? But what's funny is that it didn't work. There was nothing there, it was fake. Like, they clicked the button and it would be like, give us your email as we create your account, and they would give us that, and then afterwards we'd say, oh, we're due to capacity, we're just like, but you gotta understand, we just spent all this time, like 6, 7, I think it was like at that point 8 months of our lives building stuff that nobody wanted. And it was at that point that we had some validation. We thought, oh, people are gonna pay for this. So we, again, second time threw out the landing page app, built the social discovery engine, we were calling it at that point, and then launched with that. And after all that struggle, after 1 day, in the first day of launching that tool, we had 1 paying customer, a monthly subscription, and that trend's continued. And I'll show you this from a vanity metrics point of view, so this is by no means, you know, like quantitative kind of display of our success so far, but you can see from this slide that we launched kind of like here where we did our customer development, launched the landing page app in November, like, or no, we launched landing page app like here, August, and then we did our pivot in November. So people look at us today and they're like, wow, you guys are doing well. Not always, right? Like, it's so funny because like our engineer was, he lives in Canada, and we fly him in every 3rd week, and we were walking, and you know, like some days you're hitting your stride and you're all happy, and he's like, things are really good, and I'm like, yeah, no, we were talking about this other startup, and I said, it's too bad like that, you know, they're not hitting what, you know, like their thing's not working too well. And he said, yeah, we got really lucky. And I said, did you forget landing pages? He goes, oh yeah, I forgot about that, right? Like it's like kind of funny that once you get to some level of success, you kind of forget the struggles. So I say that all because we did it wrong. So when we were doing customer development, that I thought that's what we were calling it, we never once showed any of those prototypes to any of our potential customers. All right? Now this might sound like, are you stupid? But I honestly thought that as long as I was taking input from the market and building prototypes, that was customer development. And it was a complete fail on our part. And what we did absolutely different the second time, or when we launched social discovery, we put it in front of real people and said, would you pay for this? So that all comes down to what it took me a while to understand what Eric was trying to say is startups is not about can you build it, it's if you should build it. And every day we wake up to figure out how much faster we can get around this circle called the lean startup circle, essentially, right? Like every day we look at all those different pieces, and this is available online, you can go look at it, and figure out what can we implement to learn faster as a company. So the customer development story is, you know, for us it's all about like 2 parts. There's like the solutions team and the problem team. And I'm more on the solutions team, and Ethan's on the problem team. So he validates a lot of our assumptions and problems. And that's really, to me, the way you got to look at it. You got to listen to your customers. And people say, oh, I'm talking to my customers. You really need to talk to a lot of people. So I usually identify who I want to talk to and go talk to them. I don't let them come to me. And it's just a lot of open-ended questions. So Cindy Alvarez's blog is probably the best blog on product management. So I definitely recommend that. A thing I learned along the way that, so when I talk about like when I first started doing this, it was all about marketing, and then it became more about product. This is what I was missing, was this thing called gratification. And Sean Ellis talks about it, where your goal is to get the customer to some level of gratification as fast as you can. And there's really two parts to this, qualitative and quantitative. And for me, I was geeking out on the marketing and the metrics side, and that's actually wrong. And a lot of times startups come up to me all the time and they're like, hey, what metrics do you measure? And what tools do you use to do split testing? And do you do multivariate testing? And I'm like, I spend so much time on the qualitative that I don't give a crap. Like when you're early, right? And I'll talk about traction in a bit, but when you're early before you kind of get any level of traction, there is no point in split testing blue or pink sign up buttons on your homepage because you're probably only getting 15 uniques a day, right? Like you really need to figure out where you spend your time. And a story that really kind of resonated this whole like qualitative initial first time user experience and how that tells a story is when I was up at Twitter's, we work in Twitter's first floor, and I was up talking with one of their product managers because they just changed the registration flow for their product. And I thought they did it wrong. That was like my first response. And he's like, well, why don't you come up and talk to me? And what I thought they did wrong was, as a social network, I think the first thing you should try to do to activate your users is get them into here are your friends, connect with them that are already on the service, right? Like from the first step, from after I give you my email and password, you should be showing me people I already know or trying to engage me with those people, my friends, so that I want to come back to this service. And what they did is they did the suggested user list first. So sign up, suggested user list, then the friends, and then the search. And I say, well, why did you do that? And it's like, for them, it was all about the story, the early navigation told. And this is, I don't know, like I didn't spend enough time on product and now I'm learning, it's really cool. They didn't want to be another social network. Now that's kind of interesting because you look at Facebook and that's all they are, is a social network. Twitter, by design, organized their registration flow in that manner because they wanted people to think of Twitter as a business tool. And the second page was, here are people in business categories that we suggest you connect with. And even if I dropped off at that point, I was then told the story about, hey, have you ever signed up for Twitter? Yeah, I think it's this tool to connect with business people, right? And I just think that that's a really neat thing that is not about split testing. It's about talking to people and finding out, after they've activated on your site, asking them, how would you explain this to a friend or colleague? That's a really powerful question, both from a marketing point of view, landing page, content, copy, but just really understanding is like, what's that story your product's telling? So that's on kind of like trying to get people to gratification and then using qualitative feedback, especially early. I mean, if you guys are at product market fit and trying to scale your business, this talk is probably not for you guys that much, but it's really about trying to figure out what your users are trying to do with your product. So this is funny because like you see a lot of people, they're like, oh, I built this MVP, and the MVP doesn't do anything. My biggest pet peeve is when I see somebody saying, I'm validating using a landing page, and people have given me their email, and I've got 100 emails now, so I'm gonna go raise some VC, or I'm gonna raise some seed. Like I'm not even joking. Like people think that you can test the market by putting up a landing page, paying for some keywords, traffic, and then start a business. And I just really think that your MVP is really about your minimum kind of like useful product. And different people call it different things, minimal desirable product. But to me, the idea of a minimum MVP is whatever value I'm trying to give that customer, like what's the amount of product? And it can be a lot. You might have to spend 4 months engineering it. After you've talked to people and they've said that they needed that solution, you might need to spend four months, which I think is a long time, but you may. And if you have to spend 4 months to deliver that first level of gratification to that user, then do that, right? But don't think a landing page is an MVP, that's wrong. And really, it's the start of what your vision is. And your vision should be big. Because if you're doing a startup, especially if it's like a venture-backed startup, like don't bother doing a small idea. I agree you can create a nice lifestyle business and do like these $5 to $10 million a year companies, and that's cool, but just don't be looking at other people and trying to raise money. Like you really need to be after a big problem, and I think that's the vision part. So a story I learned that people didn't realize is when Yelp, everybody use Yelp? Show of hands? Yeah, awesome, cool. I didn't know this, right? Because like, I think we were talking about this at lunch with Pete and Joe, and really smart entrepreneurs do a lot of this stuff, but they don't call it lean, right? And great for them. That's why they're great entrepreneurs. And so Yelp, when they first launched, they launched as an email kind of service where you would say, I need to find a doctor or a lawyer in this neighborhood, and it would email your friends, and then it would show them a list of those people, and then they would select the service providers that they would recommend. It would aggregate that response and send you an email back. And then you would be like, oh, these are the people my friends recommended. And all of a sudden, nobody was using it because it got annoying. And if you've ever used Aardvark, it gets freaking annoying, right? Like that IM window, I'm done. But it just shows you that what they did do is they did get to a point where they were deriving value for their customers, right? Like people were using the email to get that value. So I just think that you really need to figure out, like, spend the engineering time after you talk to customers to do that. The other thing that people forget about is these guys, right? The early evangelists. Everybody knows Robert Scoble. He's like the most craziest picture of Robert. Like, I would be scared if I was like in front of him. Like, I would not want to like steal from him. I would be scared. Anyways, so the story of early adopters, they're super key because to me, the definition of an early adopter is somebody that's currently solving the problem in some fashion, either like scripted stuff together or they're paying a virtual assistant to do it, and they would love your solution because you would solve that better. So for us, it was simple. How many people have ever Googled Twitter, first name, last name to see if they're on Twitter? Right? Like everybody's done that, and I was like, that's what Flowtown does, kind of, but more. Yeah, for sure. But I mean, those are like the little things that you can kind of look for in regards to validating if people want this. But the early adopters are the ones that go a lot further and stream this together. And a good story that represents this is Mark Hendrickson, who's the founder of Plancast. So there's two companies. I'm just going to say, full disclosure, I'm an investor in both of them. Mark from Plancast, this is before he like raised money or launched. He comes to me, he's like, I've got this idea, and it's essentially a way for me to tell people what I'm going to be doing in the future. Right? And Mark is a brilliant guy. He's a brilliant product guy, and I would never bet against him. But I did say to him, I was like, this is kind of like a feature. Like, I don't think anybody would, like, why would I want to do that? He's like, well, here was a use case when I moved to San Francisco, and I knew I had friends there, and I want to know what they were doing, etc. I was like, I don't know. Anyways, so about 3 or 4 weeks later, I wasn't very supportive for Mark. I get an email from Laura Fitton, who's the founder of 140.com, which is a Twitter app store. And in the email, she had sent all of her investors, is like, I'm going on this road tour, and here's a document, a Google Docs of all the places I'm going to be with links to the venues and the events. And I was like, holy crap. Like, here's somebody, and Laura's not stupid. She's a geek, right? Like, she knows her stuff. Here's somebody that wrote a Google Doc because that was the best tool that she could think of to solve the problem. As soon as I saw that, I wrote back to both of them and said, Mark, meet your first early adopter. Like, straight up, like, if you can make Laura happier than what she just did with her Google Doc for what you're doing, then you're onto something, because I may not be your target customer, but Laura seemed to have that problem and she solved it this way. Like, talk. And to this day, I mean, Plancast, if anybody's used it, it's like become this really interesting way that I never thought of essentially telling people what I'm going to do in the future. So finding those early adopters, right? And at Flowtown, it was simple for us. Are you a social media marketer on Twitter? Yes, DM me. Give me your phone number. I talk to people, and then I find out, have you ever wanted to do this? And if they said no, cool, I wouldn't bug them. We go through like problem slides and solution slides. And slowly we built this list of people that were really passionate about what we were doing. The trick is, don't let them drive your requirements. They are not there to tell you what to build. They're there to give you domain expertise, typically they'll educate you in regards to the competitive space, because they solved this problem, so they probably did some searching before they did what they did. But they're definitely not there, because if you solve Robert Scoble's problems, you're going to be relevant to like a 1% of the market, right? That's the trick. You gotta support them and foster them and tell them you really appreciate their feedback, and then turn around and go, all right, where were the nuggets in this, and the rest of it we'll just let go. Feedback loop in person. I can't stress this enough. I have no problems whatsoever sitting on a plane and showing people screenshots, going to a coffee shop and soliciting, harassing people. I'll just do it. And for us, when I do it informally now, but we used to do it really formally. And for me, it was when we were doing the landing page app. So here's a funny story that just like from that moment on, I will never not do in-person usability testing. We had launched a landing page app. We did a Craigslist ad. A lot of people talk about like go on Craigslist, offer iTunes coupons. We were offering coffee. It's like, hey, meet us and we'll buy you a cup of coffee. We were broke. And we sat down, and the trick is you got to do it on the person's laptop. So just throw that out there. Don't do it on your laptop. You'll learn way more using their hardware. And the guy opens up landing page app, and the landing page app is essentially kind of like a landing page, right? We thought we're going to be really great with a quick user registration. So on the right corner was name, password, or no, email, password, sign up. Really simple. So we're like, okay, cool. Right after that flow, we'll kick them into the design wizard, and they'll be into the landing page creation process. And I thought this is really quick, like landing page, so no friction, no clicking, just sign up, boom. So the guy's like looking at the screen. We're not saying anything. We're watching him, me and my co-founder Ethan, and he signs up. And he hits register, and then the next screen is the wizard page for the landing page app. Well, it kind of looks like the home page, and he's looking at it, and we're watching him, and he creates another account in the fields that were meant as the wizard. And I was like, shit. And he's like clicking sign out. He's like, this is broken. You guys really should go back to the office. And I'm like, oh. So how would you have ever learned that if you weren't sitting there watching somebody use your app? Right? And I ask this to startups all the time. It's like, for me, even as just as somebody that supports other startups, it's not about like what you're building, it's how you go about learning that's more important, right? And that whole feedback cycle. So don't have any worries about going to a coffee shop and asking somebody, hey, can I get your advice on something? Everybody's gonna say yes, and especially if it's something you built that's kind of cool, right? So, on that front there, we do every Friday, my tip for everybody is every Friday we do usertesting.com, which is a $35 video. You can create a task kind of thing, and we share it with the team. And it's a 15-minute video that shows uninitiated users going through the reg flow, and sometimes we have tasks that are about product. And every engineer, of the designers, myself, we look at it because it's just such a great learning experience to watch these people do it. So I still do the in-person when I'm with people. But for the most part, user testing every Friday. Surveys. This is the ninja move. Like, this is the thing that when I first seen executed, I thought, holy crap, I've discovered the key to the lock of building product. Because it's, I remember I was sitting down with Sean. I'd been in the Valley for a month, and he essentially showed me what is now survey.io, but before that was ever available, this survey for customer development, that he would use to validate if companies that he was interested in working with were at product market fit. Like, that's kind of like, as a consultant, saying, hey, before I decide to work with you, fill out this survey, and the output of that survey is financial stability, and are you going to get paid, and what's the opportunity and the upside? Because like Sean would, he's an absolutely in-demand guy, and he charges a lot, and he gets what he needs. But before he did the engagement, he would validate if the startup was ready for him, right? And I was like, wow. So if all I have to do is essentially do that to my customers along the way, and then just kind of tweak things in the product, eventually I'll get there. It's a lot harder than just saying that. So the big thing for us is we do surveys every week, or every 2 weeks, a week after we survey the 2-week cohorts. And initially it's very qualitative. Most people, if you haven't done it, do it. Figure out where you're at in regards to product market fit. The question you're looking for is, if you can no longer use this product, how disappointed would you be? Very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed, what the heck is product X? Like, those are the 4 questions, or answers. And you want to get 40% very disappointed. People that would be, and you have to ask it like that. People always ask me like, well, can I ask them if they would buy this? It's like, no. Just, if you took it away, would they be disappointed? And a lot of the other great questions in that survey that's available for free at survey.io is, how would you describe this to a friend or colleague? Which is a great question. I mean, you think you built a tool to solve a problem, and then you ask them that question, and then they tell you like the total opposite, and you're like, crap. Well, why did they think that? And it could be your landing page, it could be early navigation, whatever. But the other surveys that I don't like as much as the Net Promoter Score, so the NPS score, which is a survey that came from the retail industry, the service industry, that asked the question, how likely are you to recommend this company to a friend or colleague, scale of 1 to 10. You take the 1 to 6s, the 9 and 10s, which are promoters, the people that be like raving fans. subtract your 1 to 6s, which are kind of like detractors, and that's your net promoter score, that percentage. And just to give you like a variation, don't quote me on these numbers, but like I think AT&T is like 13%, which is very low because Apple's like 75%. Right? So you got to think about it. 75% of the people would highly recommend Apple products, 9 or 10, versus like AT&T. I don't even know where those 17% from AT&T came from. I think it's not true. But anyways, maybe it's the business users. I don't know. But that's the key. And then you can do a lot of cool stuff with surveys. We do surveys sometimes around features. So since we do metrics for each one of our features, I will take a 2-week cohort of people that have used the feature and ask them a question like, what did you do 3 minutes before or after you used this feature? Which will give me an indication of kind of what mindset they were in. What did you think it would do, and what did it do, and did it meet your needs? Like, just these really open, qualitative questions. If you don't have a lot of users, get them on the phone. But if you have like 100 people taking those actions, it's worth sending a survey. My thoughts on competition. And it's funny because I added this from my last time I gave this talk. And for me, competition is not, like, you're not trying to go feature matching. That's like the wrong way, I think, to build a startup. What you're trying to do is understand, you need to become a very deep domain expert in your startup. If you're not into doing that, you probably shouldn't be in that space. Because, and I see this a lot when people get into building a product because they think there's money in it, right? They're like, oh, this is a big opportunity. I'm gonna go do like in-stream ads, or this like, I'm gonna offer this service. It's like, they do it for the money, so they never care about understanding like the kind of landscape or go deep in regards to like who does what and how they do it. So for me, and what we were doing is I knew there's a lot of players in the social space, and I went to the, it's kind of a ninja trick, but people talk about it more now. You go to the open satisfaction site, so Get Satisfaction, uservoice.com, suggestion box, and you go look, so people that are in your space that have customers that are kind of like what you want to do, and find out where the product that those people are offering do not meet the customer's needs, right? Yeah, it's like this cool thing, because what you're trying to do as a startup, even if you don't want to compete in that space, is you're trying to find the beachhead. You're trying to find that place where they're not currently addressing that problem, and come in really strong and own that in the mind of the customer or the market. And then once you've got kind of a somewhat firm position, that's your MVP, and then you can blow it up from there once you validate it, and then kind of maybe entrench on certain things that are what they're doing. So that's all the way I look at competition. People are like, who's your competitors? If it's investors, I have to like tell them, even though I'm like, I don't care. Like, I know who they are, I know what they do well, I know what their customers are saying, but for me, I care more about what my customers think about my product, and as long as I move every day, if I can get faster at going around that feedback cycle, then I just know that's my competitive advantage. It's not about features per se. So Kiss Insights, which is another product, I feel like I'm pimping out everything that Heaton's ever built, but he also did Survey.io. But what Kiss Insights does is this really cool survey, and their beachhead was they realized that customers didn't want to do what the other tools did because of people like me. They didn't want to give a public forum for somebody else to see what things people were asking for about their product, because they knew there were people like me. So he built Kiss Insights, which is this in-app survey pop-up that would prompt users, but it would never be displayed to the public. And it would be a way to get feedback, qualitative feedback on your product. And he saw that opening where tools like Get Satisfaction or User Voice were already in that space, but they weren't doing it that way. And I think he's gotten great traction. I know I use it, and it's a great solution. Pivot, don't jump. So everybody knows the story about Flickr. I mean, I don't even know the story, honestly, but I just know that they were like some MMO game. So anybody's been around the space longer than me, which isn't hard. You know the PayPal story. There's people here from PayPal. iMeme, TwitVid, OneRiot, they all pivoted, right? But the key idea behind the pivot that people sometimes misunderstand is you have to have one foot firmly planted in a piece of the domain expertise that you acquired, and then pivot around that to try to figure out maybe there's a different market opportunity. So when we were doing small business marketing, we had our foot firmly planted in social marketing. We wanted to solve that. We thought landing pages was a way to get that beachhead. And honestly, now that we've integrated with some of the leading landing page tools out there, we realize that we should let them do that and then kind of come after them. But we really pivoted on that core idea. And for your company, if you're just gonna like throw away something and then do something new, that's not a pivot. Just like call it what it is. You had an idea, it didn't work, you're doing something different. But that to me is the whole idea. Now, with that said, there's an idea called the local maximum. And Eric talked about it, and I just think it's the most fascinating thing in the world because every day I gotta make sure that I'm not stuck in this situation. And the story is simple. If I blindfolded you, put you at the base of a mountain, and ask you to walk up that mountain and like kind of figure your way out blindfolded, could you make your way up, right? And the answer is yes. You would kind of like stumble right, stumble left, kind of figure out where the pitch was, and at some point you would end up at the top of this mountain. But then you would stop because you'd start going down the other side and you'd be like, whoa, I gotta go and I gotta stop at the top of this mountain. But what if the big opportunity is a mountain 10 times the size just across the valley, right? And that is like such an interesting idea because this kind of comes back to like the whole split testing and frameworks and all that stuff. It's like, I think it was Sean one day, I was talking on the phone, Sean Ellis, and I said, well, you know, like it seems like if you just split test, you'll just, like it's not gonna work. And he's like, yeah, if you just split test, you'll either end up at porn or gambling. Like if that's all you ever do is like try to optimize, like you need to have vision, right? You need to realize that you're on this mountain and there's an interesting opportunity here, but if your goal is to create something absolutely big, then you probably need to figure out like maybe I should take the blindfold off and look across the valley. So I think that was a great story to kind of, you know, even though you're on top of a mountain, you can pivot off of that into something bigger. Traction, people always ask, especially investors, like, oh, talk to me when you got traction. And the entrepreneur's like, what does that mean? Right? I hate that question. So I'm gonna give you the best answer I got. Your goal is to get 50 signups per day. So if you're B2B or you do some kind of subscription thing, get 50 signups a day for your app. That'll give you enough people, and this comes from Sean, it's not even my idea. And at that point, you'll have enough people every day to kind of test them and figure out what their needs are and get feedback. And then I think in regards to like conversions to paid for your app, if you're getting like, you know, like 3 to 4% to 5% conversion from trial to paid, you've got traction, you've got something there. If you're at the 20% very disappointed mark, most companies, startups when they launch, I remember this kid, really smart guy, he like emails me, he's like, hey Dan, I need to raise money, and some guy told me you're the guy to talk to. I'm like, I don't know, but I'll meet with you, let's have coffee. And I think Brent Cooper was there, and Patrick, you were there as well. Yes, remember that Josh guy, Liquid Planner?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, this guy, he's like, I was like, how many users you got? He's like, I got 1,500. And I'm like, whoa, that's awesome, like, where did you get 1,500? He's like, I just got written up on Mashable. I was like, have you ever heard of Survey.io? And he's like, no, what's that? He honestly thought because he had 1,500 signed up users that he was ready to go raise seed capital to blow this thing up. And I didn't want to burst his bubble, so I just kind of let the process take care of it. And he met me at this coffee shop. I was there with Brent. And I was like, do you have access to your database? Yes. Okay, extract all the emails and let's survey these people. And he did. And within 35 minutes, he started getting responses. I think he had about 80 responses. And I said, what's the very disappointed? And he's like, 11%. It's like, dude, like, that's not, and honestly, those are people that had just activated 2 days prior. And I don't even think that's good enough. You need people that use your app and then you say, I'm going to take it away from you. So that's kind of my idea. 50 signups per day, get your very disappointed to at least 20 to 25%. The tricky thing about the very disappointed answer is that it's harder to keep going up the scale. So it's easy to go from 12 to 20%. It's harder to go from 20 to 30 and 30 to 40, right? But it's a really great indication in regards to, are you doing anything of meaning? Like, are you getting your user gratification? And then if you're a social network, I think you should aim for like 15% weekly active usage from your user base. If you're a free tool and you want to like someday monetize using ads, that's kind of like the level you want. To give you a comparable, I think Facebook today is like 35% daily actives and 90% weekly actives out of 500 million people. That's bananas. 90% of the 500 million people on a weekly basis log into Facebook and does stuff. Anyway, so you don't need to be them, but if you're like in that like early stage of it, you've got traction. So the geeky stuff, this is where I spend most of my time. I did do a lot of qualitative stuff, but Ethan is kind of more on that. I'm more on the problem team. Metrics, what do I think of metrics? I used to be like the biggest metrics geek, and I thought that it was all about the math, and it has nothing to do about the math, but it does. So here's the thing I will recommend. follow Dave McClure's pattern. He has like the pirate metrics. I don't disagree with what he says. I just think that if you try to do all of them in regards to like 3 metrics per different types of user, it's a lot. And when you're early, you don't even know what you're supposed to be building, let alone measuring. So don't, like, this is where I think he gets really, like, it makes a good framework, and then you try to implement it, and it's like, oh, this sucks. Because, like, you'll build all this code to, like, track that stuff, and then you'll change your product, and it's like, hopefully it's somewhat reusable, but it never is. So what I recommend is, figure 3, and it's really not hard. Figure out your daily actives, your weekly actives, figure out your conversions from, landing page to sign up to paid. And then the other key that I found really valuable for us is we track every feature on our site. So anytime we build a new feature, we add tracking to track the count for that usage. And with every metric, it's like a rule, you need to know who's doing that, right? So Eric says metrics are people too. You need to know if it's 10% of people converted, who are those people? Like 10% converted yesterday, who are those people? And that's been really useful because when I talk about going back and doing those surveys for people that have used specific features, you can essentially say, all right, we added this like auto follower on Twitter feature, who are the people that did in the last 2 weeks? And I'm gonna survey them and ask them certain questions that are very specific because I wanna figure out how to blow that feature out a bit more. The other thing you wanna do is cohort analysis. We don't really do that right now because so this is an example, we built it, changed the product. So we built it for landing pages, changed the product, and it was just a lot of retooling. We just said, for right now, it's not worth it. And then just make sure you do daily time series so that you can hopefully see an upward trending graph. Testing, if you do not do test-driven development in some fashion or form, like shame on you. We do BDD, and yeah, how do we define tests? Oh, so we do testing on that on that level, and then how we people are always asking like, where do you spend your time and prioritize? What we do is every 2 weeks we sit down and figure out what are 2 new features that we want to validate, and before we build them, what metric do we think it's going to move? So, like maybe it's improving something around the composer window. It's like whatever you're going to build, what is the metric that it's going to improve? Right? Is it going to improve retention? Are you going to like build out an email campaign sequence? It's going to improve conversions. Every 2 weeks we figure out what are the things, and we always pick 2 because we're a small team, and what's the metric, and we do it and we see if we got that result. And sometimes, not very often, if we don't get the result, we take the code back out of the product, which is really tough to do. Like, I don't care who you are. I thought, oh, that's easy. Nobody's using it. We're going to take it out. Because you're just like, maybe I didn't market it right. Maybe I didn't put it in the right place. Maybe the button was hidden. Whatever it is. We don't do it often, but it's recommended. Just-in-time scaling. I used to do this presentation, and then we actually got nailed. So I would say the better is not, so just-in-time means like don't build out your infrastructure before you ever need it, right? Because I remember I met this guy once in Toronto, and he had raised like $8 million, and I was like, what did you spend that on? That's like a lot of money. He's like, well, we've got 75 Blade servers, and I'm like, when did you launch? And they're like, we haven't yet. I was like, what are you doing? Like, can I have 2, right? Like, you could like help some startups out. Anyway, but I mean, this is a given. We actually were on 1 box for the longest time till about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And we got nailed. We got covered by CNN, and it brought our servers down for 1 day. But the reality of this is, and Steve Blank reinforced this, we went and spoke to his class about how we screwed up customer development, our interpretation of it. We said, he drove the point home that it's better, if your market opportunity is 100,000 people, and you might upset that 1 day that you're out, like whatever customer base you might have, or like maybe 500 people that couldn't register or didn't have a positive experience, like that's such a small percentage that it's just not worth potentially going out of business because you run out of resources. And that's all a startup is the amount of times you can pull that trigger and shoot at that target, resources, time and or money, to figure it out, right? Any startup will be successful if they have enough time to figure it out. So I think that's the real lesson for us. What I would have changed in the future, now that I've gone through it and it really hurt for that day, is I would have planned more so that when we were ready to execute, we could have been a lot faster to migrate into something that scaled versus not. So that's kind of the lesson I learned. The other thing I absolutely love is continuous deployment. We push production code whenever we want. We don't really have a release cycle right now. I mean, it can vary from 30 times a day to 50, it doesn't matter. 95% of those changes are performance-based or back-end. They're not interface-based. We're not trying to frustrate the user by like moving things around on them and all that. It's just about like, so what we do have in our product is a way to create buckets of users to test features with. So right now I'm testing some Twitter search stuff, and like I have 7 users that can see that, and the rest of them can't. Or like we're testing this new content suggestion thing, and like a bucket of users can see it and others can't. So I mean, I think that's really powerful because we can push code and test stuff, and it can break, but not break the thing for the rest of the users whenever we need to. And a lot of times so the other thing that we do that's really, I think, important is we all take turns doing support. And everybody on the team has a day of support. And it just teaches us to learn from our customers, because you're not gonna learn from anybody better than the one that takes the time to write you that email. It's in your support queue. And if you can just change a label to make it clear. Like the big one that we learned last week was we were calling the Twitter Connect OAuth. And the user's like, what's OOth? And it's funny, because like, duh, like, but why doesn't it connect to Twitter? Like, why do we call it OOth? Anyways, so I love continuous deployment for that. So we push prod whenever we need to. Cluster immune system. This has been probably one of the bigger things that I've learned doing Lean Startup and getting mentored by Eric. The idea is that everybody has a sandbox, right? I don't care who you are. If we were 50 employees, everybody would have a local build of the system that they could work on. As you scale, you can use virtualization to do this. Again, this is geeky. But everybody at Flowtown has a local build. And when you do that, you're essentially inviting anybody to submit code that will introduce a defect into your production server, which is pretty crazy, right? And even if you have good test coverage and you have a good continuous integration in CI server and build, you still introduce that. And what the cluster immune system does is it monitors your environment for baseline kind of averages from things like your server, your infrastructure, your CPU, memory usage, database queries, like whatever you want to measure, business metrics, conversions, signups. And after you do a deployment, it rechecks those metrics and it says, are we still on par? And if all of a sudden the CPU spikes to 100%, it rolls back the whole change, really simple. And if anybody, like from a technical point of view, want to talk about it, like our first version was really using Ganglia, a Ruby DSL, and Capistrano command. Like it's really technically not hard to do, but as you add more stuff like business metrics, it is. But it's really powerful because at any point that somebody introduces a defect that could take down your whole system, it rolls back the whole change, stops the line. This is critical. We didn't do this at first. You need to stop anybody else from checking in new code or building new stuff until there's a manual review, 5 whys, what happened, and then have somebody turn it back on so that we can keep going. So that's a cluster immune system. So that's my talk. With that, I do want to say that no matter what you think, like Lean Startup is not the silver bullet. It's not going to save your life. You need to have a vision, right? I don't care if you follow everything to the T. You need to be creative. You need to understand what your vision is, and you need to talk to your customers. If you want to get a hold of me, that's who I am. Twitter at Dan Martell, 2 L's, Dan at Flowtown. And if you want, I've been collecting, and I tweaked the links. I have 13 links. Some of you guys are already in the email. Send me an email, and I will add you to my list. And it's kind of like, as I find really great blog content, sometimes I bump a link off and then I send it out. But I just think, you know, what Eric's allowed us to do is give a name to things that people have been inherently doing right, but giving it away for everybody else to learn it. So thanks a lot for coming tonight. And by the way, we're hiring Ruby, so if anybody knows. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Just raise your hand, give me your name, and ask the question. Somebody's got one. I guess there was more. Let's go in the back. Name and question.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm Patrick. Question is, have you guys done any of the stuff that Dave McClure talks about, like cutting a feature to see if users scream? Have you guys done any of that?
So Patrick's question is, have we done anything that Dave McClure suggests, which is kill a feature and then see if people scream? No. And I love Dave, and I don't know how to say this. I don't know if I agree with that all the time. Honestly, me and Ethan got into it last night, and we were talking about getting rid of multi-day auto campaigns in Flowtown. So we were talking about this. He's like, I'm gonna kill this. Like, we're killing it. And Dave says you gotta kill it. And I was just like, No, like nobody's being harmed by it right now, and we don't have the resources to fix it because I know I just have, again, you have to have vision. You can't just like give up on it, right? And the only way is to talk. Nobody's ever used it and said, this is stupid. The ones that have discovered it love it. So our job is to make it better maybe, and if honestly, if I go down that path and it doesn't fit in our roadmap, we'll kill it, but no. The answer is no. I think it's a good exercise. I just don't think it's something you should do randomly the way Dave suggested, right? He's like, kill something tomorrow and see what happens. No, like, you know, maybe I'm wrong. I'm just not willing to test it when I start out. Maybe next one. Yes, name and question?
Samir?
Yeah.
Can you talk more about how you're measuring, in particular, like what packages, software packages you're using to measure, what percentage of users remain active?
Yeah, absolutely. Your name is Samir?
That's right.
Samir, thanks for the question. So Samir's question is what tools we use to measure stuff and like actives and all that.
Right.
So if you haven't built anything, go check out Kissmetrics, go check out Mixpanel, go Google search for existing stuff. We built everything from scratch because when we started, there were no other tools. And personally, I have a vision for, and I talked to Joe and Pete about this today, I have a vision for building a marketing engine that is going to require the data sets within our product around what users are doing. So there's like a strategic reason why I haven't used something out of the box. But if you haven't yet, and you're really just trying to put a prototype together, go use their products. Like, don't build it. It's tough. That cohort stuff that we built and we got rid of, there's no reason we had to build it today. You don't. But Google Analytics, we use Ruby. There's a framework called Vanity that's really cool for split testing, and it integrates with your Google Analytics. Yeah, if you have more geeky questions, let's talk after.
Yeah, you just made a great comment that you should actually expand on, that lean doesn't mean not a lot of money. There have been all sorts of blog posts and arguments going on about that since like the last couple of months. Maybe you could just expand on that topic a little bit.
Absolutely. So Eric's comment is his suggestion is to expand on it. And I appreciate the question because me and Patrick were talking about earlier. And maybe I'm wrong because like Eric's the creator of this, right? So all I can do is interpret what I've heard and read from all these guys. And to me, lean startup is a way you learn, right? And that whole circle about getting around it faster is all about learning faster. So the reason why you build split testing, the reason why you do customer interviews and you have a customer advisory board and you build hypothesis and all this stuff is to learn faster. And I don't care if you need $20 million to do that or if you need no money. It has nothing, it's not about the financial. But the financial does impact the amount of product that you can deliver to validate. It impacts the team, that you can build to validate. So yeah, it's not about money, it's about learning. So that's why I say learning is a killer feature. Thanks, Sarah. Yes, name and question?
Hey, Carno, I was just thinking, hey, the first letter of the alphabet, that's my name. Can you turn lean into an acronym and each letter stands and then get your definition out there that way?
So A's question is, can I create a word game from lean? Somebody may be able to do that. I'm not that creative.
I am.
Yeah, so I think
I'll suggest it.
Yeah, if you tweet it and hashtag it.
Because if it's as a brand a misnomer in the mind, you haven't branded it right.
Yeah, see the problem with lean is like one of those words like agile. It's like everybody wants to be agile. Everybody wants to be lean. I mean, I see the word.
But we associate it with sparse or less or conservative.
Fair enough.
Word choice.
Yeah, it is a bad word choice, but it's built off of the lean production manufacturing process, which has been around for years. So if you're actually familiar with like the TPS, like Toyota production system, it makes sense. Yeah, yeah, it's just like Web 2.0. Like, what was that? And then people, it created like this thing that we could all talk about. And I think that's the greatest thing. It's given us a context to start conversing around. Yes, name and question.
Brandon, and my question is, what web stack are you guys using on Flowtown?
So Brandon's question is what web stack or what framework? We're all Rails, MySQL backend. We use Couch. No, we're moving Mongo right now. Actually, we hit some issues for NoSQL data store. Redis rescue for kind of our worker job queue. So Rails, LAMP, I guess. Yes, name and question.
Yeah, Richard. How do you avoid your company winding up as an unpaid research lab for a much bigger company who's in a related, field?
So your question is, doing this stuff, how do you make sure that you don't end up learning and then eventually other people learn from you and then they do it and they do it big?
Yeah.
Are you going to charge for what you're doing? Because like that to me is the first way. So I mean, if it's, you just said unpaid, so I mean if I'm getting paid, indirectly when we launched Flowtown as a service company, we were getting paid to learn.
But I mean, how do you just stop that? I mean, because the big companies, sometimes they can come in and say they invented something. Everybody believes
Oh,
it.
the patent and all that stuff? Like, I don't know.
Just an idea, like suppose, I mean, I'm not sure what Flowtown, what bigger companies are closest to Flowtown, but for example, if Google looks at your company at some point and they're saying build or buy, what do you think would stop them from saying, hey, we'll put 50 guys on this tomorrow and it'll only cost us, you know, 200 grand.
No, and I agree. That's actually a really interesting question, Richard, that a lot of people don't talk about. And I think it has nothing to do with lean, and it has to be more on strategic and business.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, it's like, what's your probabilities of success? If you're doing something that Google actually finds interesting, that's probably a good thing, right? Because they're not stupid. And at the end of the day, even if they launch something similar, I think they've done enough of those lately that we can just ignore them, right? I'm just throwing that out there. It's not like 5 years ago where they didn't have any like blunders like Wave and Buzz and like Orchid and all these things, right? So they have enough of those that I think it comes down to focus. And again, if your whole goal is being faster at learning about your customer, and that is your competitive advantage, and that's what Bark was, Aardvark. I mean, they were just really obsessed on user learning and that focus, that Google said, well, we could have built this, and I think they could have, but they said, let's just bring these guys in because we're going to learn a lot from having them around-ish. I don't know, but.
So you're saying your advantage there is that you can execute faster.
I don't know about execute, because execute is, again, a different thing. Execution is about distribution deals, it's about like just a lot of stuff. I think I can learn faster. So if we focus on learn, that's the only thing I'm confident that nobody in my space or my competitive landscape is more obsessed about their customer and learning than me. I know that for a fact. And if I find out they are, I'm going to double up. So that's all I can figure out. And then maybe that works out, maybe it doesn't. We'll find out in 5 years. Yeah, name and question?
Dana, this goes actually to what you're just saying about that you're obsessed with learning and you're talking about the customer development being like a constant process. What was the very earliest step you took in terms of customer development? Like when this was like the most nascent idea, what was the first step you took in customer development?
Like before Flowtown even knew what product we wanted to build?
Exactly.
We essentially went and found people to pay us to solve marketing problems.
So I mean, like, how did you do that though?
Oh, just like my network. Like, I mean, I'm a pretty outgoing guy. I'll like, hey, does anybody need help with their small business marketing? Let's talk. And like, will you pay me a little bit or nothing? I'll do it for free. Tell some friends. Like, I mean, those are marketing questions, and I'd already gone through it. The real answer is I used my past company, my brand, and I launched it. We did a press release. I mean, this is hilarious. We have a press release. I don't suggest ever doing a press release. But we did it as a way to like establish that we're a real company, because we knew that that was important to the small business owners that we were going to do the services stuff. It's less important when you're doing product and internet. People don't get to know you as a person because it doesn't matter. They judge you based on your product, right? But that to me is like, just are you willing to go to a coffee shop and interrupt a stranger having their coffee and ask them for feedback on your product? I mean, that's how you get first feedback. Back in the back, question?
Azra. My name's Azra, and I wanted to ask you, so you were just talking about interrupting people at a coffee shop and asking them for feedback. My question is, usertesting.com versus like in-person feedback, how good of a substitute do you think usertesting.com is for, you know, actually getting your product in front of people versus, like, what do you think are some of the downfalls that are really key that you miss out on that way?
Are we Twitter friends?
Yes.
Azra? Oh,
Yeah.
good. Nice to meet you. Thanks for the question. So it's funny because like what we did originally is everybody were three. Everybody on Friday would have to go to a coffee shop and bug people. And our developer David is very introverted, and he was upset. He's like, I don't want to do that. And we're like, everybody has to do this. You need to go learn about our customers. We're learning. You need to see how people interact. So user testing added the ability for us to do the video low friction to the team and then socialize it amongst the team and have a historical record, so now that when we bring in new resources, they can actually see what people are saying about it. Because I can't tell you, like, we've introduced some engineers and they start geeking out and I'm like, oh, you want to see something really geeky? And they watch this video and the person's like super uninitiated and they're just like, I don't even know. So their mindset changes. So the video is great because it's recorded. What you miss out on is the opportunity to have a conversation, right? Those people that do the videos, I never get to email them and say, you know, what's your reality? What do you do for a living? Like, why did you get confused? How would you explain Twitter to a friend? Like, all these things that would let me understand their mindset, that would then give me a filter to judge their feedback. But honestly, the user testing is more of a way just to make sure that you don't screw up your registration flow, that you're getting to see, like most startups, founders don't go through new sign up of their product on a weekly basis, right? But that's the most important thing to nail and keep good if you want to grow, because if you screw, like I remember the one time we, there was something broke. Oh, there was an Ajax function that broke so that when you did the imports, it wouldn't show anything. And we didn't have a test for it, and we didn't know it was broken until the Friday. Right? When we saw the video and the person's like, this thing sucks, it doesn't do anything. Right? Imagine if we never did these videos and we waited for somebody to think that that was broken to tell us that it was broken versus them just think this product sucks. So, you know, those are the two kind of difference. I don't think you do one without the other. I think you do both. Great question, thanks. Yes, question, Dean?
Yeah, thanks. My name's James. In the Lean Startup Circle or cycle, they have the 5 whys of failure. Can you give us an example of you're applying those 5 whys to a given failure?
Yeah, so James' question is this concept of 5 whys that Eric talks about. I'm actually, that's probably like the part I don't do very well. My 5 whys is like, let's write a test for that and move on. And I know it's not right. I just, you know, like, my advice to everybody is do some of it that feels right. Don't be super anal that you're like, oh, before I launch product, I gotta make sure that we have our operation systems in place and our split testing and our continuous. Like, those are all things that you just do a little bit as we grow our engineering team, it's gonna be really important to do 5 whys, right? So that we can improve the kind of like the human factors. So, you know, the Eric does a better job explaining it, but it's like, why did this break? Why this break? You just keep asking until you realize it's usually human error first. Somebody wasn't trained properly. And then, but what's cool that I learned after I heard him say that a couple times is, as you do the 5 whys, you should be pushing defects down away from the product and into training. So as you do 5 whys, initially, like we do, it's testing. So we didn't have a JavaScript testing framework, so we got to deploy, you know, Selenium and make sure we have JavaScript testing now. Or we had this part of the code that wasn't properly tested. But as you kind of do that, you got good test coverage, and it's like, why did that break? It's like, oh, because we never taught people that we should be using this type of framework and the onboarding process. So that's the kind of cool part I learned after doing 5 whys, but we don't do it that well. So thanks for the question, though. Yeah, right there.
My name's Uday. And the question I have for you is, do you have any experience personally, or have you seen examples of people who have geographically scattered teams who have been able to do lean well?
Yeah, we do that. We're geographically scattered. My personal opinion is you should hire people wherever they can be. It does change your development process, where if you try to do pair programming, obviously that's a lot more difficult. It can be done. It just really comes down to like the personal team and the way you want to work. But as long as I call it socialize. You socialize the learnings of what the customer says and the survey result. The survey results are available to anybody. The videos that we do are available to anybody. Everybody does customer support. Like, if you just did those 3 things and make sure everybody understood, you're learning, right? And then there's people like Ethan who's more like, all right, here's a hypothesis. Let's go and validate it, you know, with the least amount of effort, right? Like, we had this idea once that if we added this like social number to your account in the product, it was like this game mechanic. If you were like a 14 and the average is 25, and we told you what to do to get to 25, you would do it. And the way we tested that was an email, and we sent an email to 100 people and said, your social value is 1,247. We sent the same email to all 100 people. Like, they were all 1,247, but we told them it was based on these criteria, this algorithm. And we asked them, like, if we had this in the product, would you take those steps? And the feedback was clear. It's like, I don't give a crap, just tell me what to do. Like, users don't care. They're like, I gotta cook, you know, they're a restaurant or they gotta make coffee. They just want, like, show me what to do. Like, it's funny how, like, they will just do checkboxes if you walk them through that process. So, you know, it was an idea we had. We validated with an email. We didn't change the product, and everybody got to learn. So.
Do you use things like Basecamp to socialize?
Yeah, so we use Basecamp, Campfire. We use Pivotal for bug tracking and kind of feature releases, and Amazon for infrastructure. Cool. Anyways, thanks again, everybody.